Packing, Details Matter, by user SD1212. When we were packing, I numbered all the boxes and used color-coded labels for each and had a running inventory sheet for each box. I packed the entire house by myself. Well, the kids helped with their toys. My husband didn't do the garage till I forced him to. I kept asking him what's in the box so I could list and number it so we knew what was in it. He lost patience and said, "There are wrenches, screwdrivers and shit like that, dear." He does this for multiple boxes. Saying things like it doesn't matter, it just needs to be packed and never mind the list, the movers are going to be here soon. Etc. etc. So I dutifully write this down. Cue the malicious non-compliance. Fast forward, we are moved into and renovating the new house. We are beyond stressed because there are borders and wallpaper that were applied by Satan, which delayed painting, which delayed carpet, etc. Hubby is looking for a specific tool. Asks me what's in a specific numbered box. I can give him specific details, but tell him, that's orange, which is kitchen. You need blue, which is the garage. So he goes over to the boxes labeled in blue with the garage stuff in it. There's a pretty big pile. He knows that I can find stuff in the boxes I packed and asks which box is the tool he wants in. I tell him he didn't give me a lot of detail. He points to a box and tells me to read out what's in the box. I read out wrenches, screwdrivers and shit like that, dear. He gets a little annoyed and asks about the next one. I say it doesn't matter, it just needs to be packed. I handed him my log, and just told him that's what he gets for not cooperating. He had to go through about 20 boxes to find the right one. Want to log everything I do? Sure, I can do that, by user Logisa. This was almost 10 years ago, contracting for a very large financial services provider. For some context, team manager was promoted to a new division, and the team, 8 of us working across 2 shifts to cover international as well, were left with 2 team leaders, we'll call them Moron Boy and Passive Gal, to run the show until the new manager was hired. New MGR joined 6 months later, or early, depending on perspective, and probably because of me. My job in a nutshell was to onboard new employees into all the required systems for their daily functions, as well as set up their email and AD accounts for server access, which was dumped on my lap a month into my job because I had prior experience, so said Moron Boy. I didn't mind the email and AD because it's literally 2 minutes per account, and didn't affect my central function by more than 20 minutes a day, it'll make sense soon. And audits were 30 mins a week. This all happened from a centrally shared mailbox. It's requests, so you can't determine how busy you are. On to the fun. Almost before the door hit the manager on the way out, Moron Boy and Passive Gal call us into a meeting room, and states that we must do no less than 10 requests a day, all to be logged on their call logging system, and here's the contract amendments we must sign or be fired. Being a contractor, you'd think I would shut the hell up, but nope, I just can't do being kicked in the balls, so I piped up I don't see how it's possible to guarantee 80 requests a day minimum for every team member to meet the requirement. Why not scalar the ticket count and see who did what? His face turned a deeper color and he shouts at me to mind my own business. I don't know what I am talking about. Cue my MC, which included calling my contract house manager, Sassin Funigal, explained what was happening, and after she could breath again from laughing so hard, she told me not to get her fired. I head back to my desk, knowing full well audits are about to start in a week, and I get multiple requests to make amendments on accounts to test Active Directory security. And lo, here it begins. I got an email 2 days later to prep for a massive test. I am tasked to amend nearly 6,000 accounts with new settings, and then change them back on request, with minimal impact to the users, during working hours, so I needed to do this quickly. Now, any tech worth his measure out there, will know, almost anything is scriptable. I set it all up, called my mate at service desk, and here's the funny thing, he also has a script to log multiple tickets. Roll on D-Day. I take the auditor's call at 8 AM to make the change. I send the email to my desk mate, and he logs the tickets in a record 30 seconds, my mailbox booms with 6K open tickets. I run my script and 90 seconds later, bam, job done. I carried on with my core function. 3 hours later, auditor called me to revert. I ran my second script, everything back to normal, called my mate to close the tickets, and a minute later my mailbox frazzled for a bit getting 6K closure tickets. It's at this point I smile, sit back and start browsing all my MIM sites. Yes, joys of AD control, I gave myself unrestricted internet access. A nice perk. Anywho, in less than an hour, passive gal comes to me to ask what's happening. I simply state that the contract amendment they forced on us clearly means I don't have to work for 200 days. So I'll be sitting here enjoying my time off, or I can do it from home. Either way, I'm ahead of the curve. She walks away and moron boy storms over demanding I get back to work. I repeat what I said to passive gal. He spluttered for a while, and he huffs off. True to my word, I sat at my desk doing nothing, but sadly it didn't last 2 days before the head of the department called me in. After an initially aggressive start to the meeting on his part, I got to explain the sitch. I wasn't even to the good part, and he drops his head into his palm, calmly listens to the story, asks me for a copy of the amendment, and thanks me for the time. 2 hours later he calls me back and asks me, with sass and Funigal in the room, what would it take to GRT me back to work? I decided to keep it simple, formally retract the stupid amendment, and pay me out for the time spent on the audit, which is 600 days, as per the contract amendment. He blowfished for a few seconds, agreed, and I left for the day. Wake up the next morning to a huge jump in my bank account, with an email confirming I'll be back in the office, please. I am a man of my word. I was back at my desk, working as usual, and for some reason, moron boy and passive gal never came near me again, even when I shifted to another department. Edit, in lieu of queries, the actual verbiage of the contract is lost to history, and I apologize, it's misleading. The scope of the mandate was strongly worded to do no more and no less than 10 a day, not at least. Santa is a hilariously evil master of MC, by user Mufius_99. Now I would never ever do anything like this to my children. But Santa? That dude is an evil master. A few years ago the kids had their hearts set on getting tablets. We said no. We took the kids to get photos with Santa. Santa, and what do you want for Christmas this year? Kids, tablets. Santa, are you sick? Do you have headaches? Are you looking for Tylenol? Kids, no. Tablets. Like for games and stuff. Santa, oh. I don't know. I'll see what the elves can cook up. Seriously, this couldn't have gone any better. Imagine their surprise going through their stockings and finding bottles of Christmas Joy tablets from the North Pole Pharmacy Services with their names and all the typical other things you find on a prescription label. I guess those are your tablets. We said. Then a while later they opened up a pair of iPad mini boxes complete with slate tablets cut to fit and chalk. Oh, I guess Santa got you some stone tablets too. We said. Eventually a pair of electronic tablets showed up, but not before we had a great time enjoying Santa screwing with the kids. You want me to wrap your presents? Okay, by user Dafluffy14. Every year my dad simply refuses to wrap his own presents for Christmas. He pushes that task on to either myself or, for gifts for me, my brother. This year he said he'd give me $5 to wrap a present for my mom, so I agreed. He came in 2 minutes later with another thing for me to wrap. I told him that it was $5 more to do that. He refused, and we went back and forth for a while and I never agreed to anything. I wrapped the paid-for present very nicely, but as for the other one, I wrapped it in a way that completely undermined the whole purpose of wrapping a gift in the first place in a nice clear plastic. That way, for everyone playing White Elephant, they'll know not only what it is, but who put it in as well. My dad almost always puts in a Visa gift card with 1 cent on it. When he saw it at first he didn't think it was wrapped, but I told him to look closer and to see that it was indeed wrapped. He ended up not caring, but I'll get to see how everyone else reacts tomorrow. IG. He even complimented me on my wrapping skills, kind of backfired, but I tried to comply in the least helpful way possible. Uneasy face. Edit. This white elephant is for any kind of gift. Gag gifts and real gifts are on the table. My dad is being a POS here by putting this gift in. It also does not say how much is on it. It's a surprise for whoever gets it. I just happen to know because he told me. He's not a very good person, so I try and cooperate as maliciously as possible in any situation I can. Brad and the Table, by user Quiet Borderline. This story was told to me by my friend Lucy. At the time, she lived in an army town and worked for many summers at a restaurant popular with the officers and their families. At this particular restaurant, which is on the higher end, there's a table reserved for high-ranking officers who visit the base. People who worked there referred to it as the table. On busier nights when there isn't a higher-ranking officer in town, it's utilized to seat more patrons, but for the most part, it's left alone. It's Friday, so it's busy. There is a general visiting the base, so the table isn't being used just in case he decided to grace the establishment with his presence. Lucy is manning her section when the owner, named John for the purposes of this story, waves her down. She heads over and he tells her, I need you and Annie, another server, to help me man the table. The general is coming? She asked. Nope. Brad is. Lucy rolled her eyes. Brad was a local bigwig's high school-aged son, and he had it in his mind that he was a hot shot. He frequented the restaurant with his girl of the week and proceeded to make a nuisance of himself every time, but not enough to the point that he was asked to leave. Lucy asked John, are you sure? What if the general wants to eat dinner with us? At this, John leaned in with a wide smile and said, apparently the general called and told us to give Brad the table and to give him and his guests anything he wanted. Lucy then smiled as she realized what was about to happen. Brad was about to get a serving of malicious compliance on the house. 20 minutes later, Brad, wearing a West Point blazer, arrives with several young people. John makes a big show of greeting them and escorting them to the table. The people look around, impressed, and Brad proceeds to command Lucy, John, and Annie around like he owns the restaurant. The only good thing about this particular experience was that, due to him being underage, Brad and his buddies never tried to order any alcohol. Brad proceeded to be a nuisance, demanding more appetizers, sending food back because it wasn't cooked just right, ordering the most expensive entrees on the menu, yada, yada, yada. Lucy, Annie, and John continue with this, smiling as more and more food is added to the table. It's time for the check. Lucy told me that the entire group managed to rack up $843.29, not counting the mandatory gratuity because the party is above a certain size. Brad gets the bill. And he flips out. What is this? He barked, waving the check. It's your check. John said. The general said to let you order anything you wanted. Brad stands up to argue, and that's when the host rushes up, her face white. John, the general is here. She whispered. Everyone turns to look and there's the general with his entourage. John excuses himself before going over. He and the general start to talk for a few minutes, and Lucy notices Brad turning white and starting to get out of his seat. Annie looked at him and said, you better not try a dine and dash. She said. I really don't want to have to sick these nice officers on you. Brad sat down and fidgeted. John and the general come back to the table. Making eye contact with Brad, John said, Brad, you said the good general here insisted you have the table and that you can order anything you want. Is this true? He only nodded. Well, the general here said that he never made no such phone call. That's odd. Brad said before looking at the general. I'm pretty sure it was you I talked to. Sir. I have the phone number. Let's call it. John said, pulling out his cell phone and dialing a number. That's when they hear Brad's brand new cell phone going off in his pocket. The general held his hand out and Brad puts the phone in his hand. He checks the number and asks John, is your number 123-456-7890? It is. John said. The general then proceeded to get a serious look on his face. Brad, are you a cadet? I'm being considered for an appointment. Brad said. The general nodded. I suggest you pay your bill, tip in full and apologize to the staff for your behavior. He said to Brad. I also suggest withdrawing your name as soon as possible to save yourself the embarrassment. Keeping his head down, Brad paid the bill, meekly apologized and left with his sycophants. The general and his entourage patiently waited for the table to be cleared and set. They proceeded to have a nice meal, leaving a generous tip and apologizing for people like Brad. Lucy proceeded to have a wonderful Brad-free career.